I still keep the ruined photo box tucked on the highest shelf of my townhouse closet. The cardboard edges are worn thin, and inside lie dozens of old printed pictures, every single one of Diana's faces sliced clean away with a pair of dull kid school scissors. I was 8 years old when I started cutting her out. That was the summer my little brother Jasper burned up with a high fever, while our mother was off staying with her college junior boyfriend, too wrapped up in her own new romance to rush home. Jasper was only 4. His temperature spiked fast. Our father was stuck working double shifts out at the auto repair shop. No way to get back to the house quick enough. Diana had promised she would be home to watch us. Instead, she texted once, said she was busy, told us to give the kids some children's Tylenol, and wait for Dad. By the time Elias walked through the front door that night, Jasper's small body was already unresponsive on the living room couch. The emergency room doctor told us the fever had gone too far. There was nothing they could do. After the funeral, Diana barely came around. When she did show up, her mind was still fixed on Tyler, that college boy she could not seem to let go of. I could not look at every family snapshot we pulled out. So I took scissors from the art bin in my bedroom and went through every album. I chopped her out of birthday photos, holiday dinners, snapshots from trips to the community pool. What remained were jagged, empty spaces, gaps where she was supposed to be. I did not understand complicated words like abandonment back then. All I knew was that she had chosen someone else over us, and my little brother was never coming. A month later, my third-grade teacher, Ms. Bennett, grew worried about I sat quiet at my desk most days, rarely joining group work. One afternoon, she knelt down beside my table and asked how things were going at home. Without hesitation, I told her my mother was dead. I told her I wished I could have my deskmate's mom, someone who would show up when you were. Ms. Bennett's face softened with concern. She called my father at work that same day and asked him to come into the school. I sat in that small, brightly lit room, plastic chairs lined against, while Ms. Bennett explained what I watched my dad's shoulder hump. He stood there for a long beat, just staring at her, and then died, his voice low and rough. Yeah, she passed away along. I did not fully grasp what that moment meant, and he was not talking about a physical death. He was burying Diana, erasing her from our public family story to protect a broken little girl who could not process what. The lie settled over our household like heavy dust. Everyone at school believed my mother's gone. Neighbors believed it. For years, we lived inside that fall. A couple weeks after that meeting came the school family. Every kid was supposed to bring a parent to run races and play field games. Dad could not get to work. I wandered around the plant alone, watching other kids laugh while their moms and dads. I spotted Mr. Hale, school janitor, mopping up. I dug into the pocket of my hand-me-down jacket and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill I had saved up from. I walked right over and held them toward him. I asked if he could pretend to be my the day. He stared at me, confused, and gently pushed my hand. No one knew how hollow everything felt underneath our quiet hold. Those memories used to feel locked safe. Grew up. I graduated college, built a career graphic designer, bought this small town outside Charlotte. Dad semi-retired, spent his weekends tinkering with pickup trucks. I rarely thought about Diana unless I pulled down that beat-up photo box. I truly believed she would never cross back into my world. 21 years had slipped by without a single. Last Tuesday evening, I sat at my kitchen counter, going through Warner. My laptop screen glowed overhead light. A new message popped up in my personal inbox. The sender named my blood run cold. Hale. It was short. I have been thinking about you for so long. I need to talk. My finger hovered over the keyboard. At those few words. The woman I had spent my whole childhood pretending was dead had my address. After more than 2 decades of silence, she was knocking on the door of the life I had carefully built. Saturday morning arrived gray and damp, thin rain streaking across the windshield as I drove toward the downtown cafe. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight. I had dressed plainly, no attempt to look polished or sympathetic, just my usual work jeans and a faded cotton sweater. Before leaving home, I texted Maggie the cafe address, told her I would check in when the hour wrapped up. If I went radio silent, she promised she would call me. The cafe hummed with weekend noise, clinking mugs and low chatter spilling through the air. Steam curled upward from coffee machines. I spotted her immediately, seated at a corner booth near the front window. Diana looked older, of course. Lines spread across her face. Her hair dyed a soft honey blonde shade. Even after 21 years, I recognized the set of her shoulders, the way she tapped one nail against the tabletop when she waited. My stomach twisted. When she saw me walk over, she stood quickly, her expression soft, eyes glistening like she was ready to cry. She reached out as if she planned to pull me into a hug, and I stepped back, stopping just out of her reach. Her arms faltered and fell back down to her sides. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice quiet. I slid into the booth across from her, kept my bag resting on my lap. "This is only 1 hour. I am here to ask questions. I am not here to rebuild a relationship." A server stopped by, and I ordered black coffee. Diana ordered a vanilla latte. For the first few minutes, she rambled about how hard her life had been after she left town. She talked about financial struggle, about bad romantic choices, about how young and overwhelmed she had been at 19. Every sentence circled back to her own suffering. She barely mentioned Jasper. I cut her off mid-sentence. "What about that? When Jasper had that fever, you knew he would be sick. Why didn't you come?" Diana's gaze drifted away, toward the rain-streaked storefront. She sighed. "I was so confused. Tyler swept me off feet. I felt trapped inside that house, stuck with 2 little kids before I was really ready for motherhood. I thought a few more hours away wouldn't hurt anything. I truly believed your father would get home. Children's Tylenol," I said flatly. "That is what you told him. You did not call an ambulance. You did not get in your car and drive back. You stayed with your boyfriend while my little..." Pain flickered at her face, but it was most self-pity, not guilt or Jasper. "I have carried that weight every single day," insisted. "I hate myself what happened. But you cannot act like everything was only my fault. Elias worked overtime. He's never present. There was so much pressure of us. That made blood rise. My father had worked double shifts to pay rent and keep full. He was perfect, but he had never abandoned his sick children for a new lover." I could hear Maggie's voice in the back of my head, warning me Diana would shift blame. She was exactly that, rewriting history to soften her own ability. "I did not drive here to listen to you blame Dad for your choices," I told her. "You made your decision. You chose to stay away. Jasper, life." Diana's eyes turned cold for half a second before she slipped back into her silence. She changed subjects, started talking about missed birthdays, about all the milestones she had watched from far away. She said she wanted a chance to know me now, to make decades. "I am not interested in your second chance," I replied. "You lost a chance when you walked out. I came here hoping you would own what you did. You are still making excuses. This meeting is over." I moved to stand up. That was when her completely. Little regret vanished. She leaned forward across the table, voice lowered, frustration. "You're being cruel. I came here vulnerable, trying to apologize. Can you not give me even a little bit of grace? Blood means something, Lily." "Family does not leave a boy to suffer alone," I answered. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Rain mist hit my cheek the second I stepped outside. My hand shook as I unlocked my car. I had expected sorrow, maybe genuine remorse. Instead, I got deflection and demands for gradation to give. I thought ending the coffee shop the chapter. 2 hours later, after I got back home, my phone began lighting up. Text message from Diana. First, pleased to reconsider. Then remarks about how my father had been wild of things. By evening, she had found the social media of my distant cousins, sending them long private messages telling her family tragedy. She was painting herself a misunderstood grieving mother, and me an unforgiving daughter. I sat on my couch at my screen. I had set clear boundaries, and she trampled without hesitation. It was plain now. Diana was being shut out quietly. She intended to pull other people into this fight. My passive waiting was no longer enough. I'd start protecting myself. Before she tore through the quiet life I had built. I closed the email without opening the body text, slamming my laptop shut like I could trap those words behind the plastic casing. My heart hammered hard in my chest, and I stepped away from the kitchen counter, pacing across the hardwood floor. 21 years. Not a birthday card, not a quick text, nothing. Now she showed up out of thin air, acting like time had simply paused between us. Maggie picked up on the second ring when I called my best friend. I told her everything, voice tight, leaning against the cold wall by my front door. She listened quietly, her tone sharp with caution once I finished speaking. "Do not write her back," Maggie said plainly. "This does not come out of nowhere. People do not reach out after 2 decades just because they suddenly missed you. There is always something they want." I knew she was right, but my mind kept spiraling anyway. Curiosity tangled with old raw hurt. What would she even say? Would she apologize for Jasper? Would she make excuses for that summer? That night I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, fragments of childhood memories looped behind my eye. Jasper's small, burning hot forehead, the empty jagged spaces in my photo albums, the crumpled $10 bill in my 8-year-old. The next afternoon I drove over to see my father. His small ranch house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the driveway cluttered with rusted truck parts he liked to fix up in his spare time. I found him in the garage, grease smudged across his forehead, bent over an old engine block. I did not beat around the bush. Diana emailed me. Elias froze. The metal wrench slipped in his grip and clanged against the concrete garage door. He slowly stood upright, the lines around his face. For a long moment he said nothing at all, just stared off toward the overgrown backyard. That familiar heavy guilt hung in the air between us, the same weight from that old school office. How did she find you? He asked eventually, his voice low. I have no idea. I never gave out my contact information to any distant relative. I crossed my arms over my chest. Did you have any contact with her always? Did you give her email? He shook his head. Lila, I swear not. I cut all ties after she left. I never spoke with her. There was genuine alarm and depression. Yet underneath it I caught faint and complicated. Not anger, almost weariness. She must have tracked you down through social media or records. People can dig up almost anything on. We moved into the kitchen and sat across from each other at his dining table. He told me Diana had reached out to him roughly 3 months. Never mentioned it. Dung. I felt a betrayal, that he had kept. He explained he had ignored every message, hoping she would lose interest in. But she had not. She had kept searching. Maybe you're her out. Elias softly. I blinked, stunned. That was the last thing I wanted him to say. Are you serious? She was gone 21 years. She let my little brother die because she was too boyfriend. I know. I will never what she did. Agreed to clarify, raising hands in surrender. I am not asking you to forgive her. Sometimes people get older. They look back on their youth and regret choices they made. Closure something for you. Closure. The word felt hollow, as if sitting across from Diana for an hour could stitch shut wounds that had lived in me my whole life. I left my father's house and unsettled. His quiet suggestion lingered in my head long after I got to my townhouse. That night, against Maggie's clear warning, I opened the email. Diana's message constructed. She wrote about how much she had carried regret all these years, how young and back then. She described endless nights lying awake for and me. She claimed she had been trapped, scared, overwhelmed at 19. She asked for short coffee, nothing more. Just one chance to talk face to face. No pressure for reconciliation. Every paragraph reality just enough. There was blunt acceptance of blame. No honest acknowledgement she had chosen her sick children. It was all soft self-pity. Still, a foolish part of me wondered, what if this was the only shot I ever got to ask her every question that had haunted me since I was 8? I argued with myself for 2 more days. Maggie kept begging me not to engage. My father kept gently floating the idea it might help me heal. Finally, I typed a short, guarded reply. 1 coffee shop meeting, public place, 1 hour maximum. No further contact if I decided it was over. I said I could overthink and delete it. Within 10 minutes, my phone pinged. Diana wrote back immediately, overflowing with gratitude. She picked a busy downtown cafe, time for Saturday mid-morning. Reading her reply, old prickle ran down my spine. I thought I was holding control. But somewhere in agreeing to that meeting, the quiet balance I had maintained my whole had already broken apart. I called Maggie the moment I finished reading through Diana's long private messages to our distant cousins. My thumb hovered over the screen, saving screenshots of every text, every fragment of the one-sided story she was spreading. Maggie listened while I walked her through the whole cafe confrontation, her breathing tight on the other end of the line. She is weaponizing family sympathy, Maggie said. She knows most of those relatives only heard bits and pieces of what happened decades ago. They do not have the full truth. All they will see is a mother reaching for her child who keeps pushing her away. I knew she was right. By Sunday afternoon, one of my older second cousins sent me a cautious text. He wrote that Diana had reached out to him, said she understood I was hurting, but hoped I might find space for forgiveness. It stung to read. Strangers to the real pain of Jasper's death were already gently nudging me toward grace I did not owe. That Sunday evening I drove over to my father's house again. I brought the screenshots pulled from my phone, ready to show him exactly what Diana had started doing. I expected outrage. I expected him to stand firmly on my side. Instead, Elias sat at his kitchen table, rubbing slow circles against his forehead, looking worn down. I got a message from your cousin too, he admitted. Diana messaged me again last night. She said you were unnecessarily harsh with her at the coffee shop. My shoulders dropped. She lied to them. She skipped over every part about Jasper. She acts like I turned her away for no reason. I am not defending her actions, Elias said quickly. I hate that she is dragging other people into this mess. But some of these relatives are talking. They keep asking me why we cannot find some middle ground. I repeated There is no middle ground. She chose her boyfriend over a sick 4-year-old boy. Now she wants to rewrite history so everyone feels sorry. His voice grew soft, tired. I just wish this could stop tearing people apart. What if you give her limited contact? Not full family, just occasional texts. Enough to calm the relatives down. Maybe it would keep her from stirring up. The suggestion landed heavy in my chest. My own father was asking me to yield small pieces of my boundaries to keep distant family happy. A cold sense of isolation settled over me. The person I had always counted on to protect me was now asking me to compromise my own safety for the sake of peace. Even Maggie had mentioned in one moment that partial limited contact might diffuse the situation, though she warned me not to. Diana, trapped between pressure from my father, soft pleas from relatives, and Maggie's conflicted advice. I convinced myself I could. If I allowed sparse, carefully monitored text messages, she would lose her reason to go running family. I thought I could contain the damage. I told my father I would try limited, strictly text-only communication, no visits. Elias visited. Relief washed his face. Like a weight he had carried for weeks had lifted. He thought this fragile compromise would quiet down. I left his house with my stomach, already uneasy. For 3 days, the arrangement. Diana sent texts. She asked mild questions about my job, my townhouse, small surface-level details. I kept every reply short and guarded, never opening up personal. I saved every single exchange. I told myself in control. On Thursday morning, I woke up to messages. Diana pushed past these we had set. She began bringing up meeting again, this suggesting dinner, saying we could bring my father to make it safe. When her tone shifted. She sent screenshots of our text thread, edited to cut out all firm refusals, and forwarded them to even more members of the family. She framed it as me stringing her along, giving her yank it away. Within hours, reached out. More sympathetic to me, but several other frustrated notes, saying I was playing others' heart. One aunt even called my father to argue that I was being stubborn and unkind. When Elias' voice was strained, he had not anticipated Diana would twist partial truce. My compromise fired completely. By trying to reduce conflict by giving a little ground, I had handed her new material to manipulate everyone around me. The relatives now held fragmented, altered pieces of our conversation. I could not take those screenshots back. I sat on my couch, scrolling through of incoming messages, realizing how badly I had miscalculated. I had believed I could manage her, but she had only used session as fuel. The situation was far worse than it had been before I agreed to text her at all. Sleep slipped away from me that weekend. I kept rereading the photos of Diana's old letters, turning over every word in my head. The proof sat safe inside my phone, yet I hesitated to send it out to the whole family. Blasting every relative with private decades-old notes felt like burning everything down. I did not want to become the person dumping painful family secrets all over group chats, no matter how justified I was. Pressure closed in from every direction. Several relatives kept messaging, pushing me to be the bigger person. One aunt called and lectured me for 20 minutes, saying holding on to old pain would poison my whole life. She never once asked what had actually happened to Jasper. My father grew distant. He did not argue against the letters, but he also would not publicly stand beside me. He said he needed time to process everything he had buried for so long. In practice, that meant he stayed quiet while Diana's social media post kept collecting sympathetic comments. Even Maggie could only do so much. She listened for hours, but she was outside the blood family. She could not make my aunts and cousins see reason. I found myself sitting late at night on my living room floor, pulling the beat-up photo box from the top shelf. I spread the sliced-up snapshots across the carpet. Jagged empty spaces stared back at me, the same gaps I had made with kid school scissors at 8 years old. Grief for Jasper washed over me fresh and raw. All these years later, I was still cleaning up the wreckage of that. On Sunday evening, Diana sent me a long private message. Her soft regret was gone entirely. She dropped every polite She wrote that I was wasting my life clinging to the past, that I owed her a chance to mend what had been broken. She threatened to show up at my townhouse in person. She said if I refused to speak to her, she would knock on my front door and explain everything face to face, whether I wanted her there. My pulse spiked when I read that. The safe distance I had relied on was about to vanish. This was no longer only text messages and distant family. She was prepared to intrude on the private space I had built for her. I blocked her number away, but blocking would not stop her from driving across. I called my father immediately, voice. I read him the threatening lines from. I expected alarm. Instead, he sounded worn out, caught between sides. She would not really do that, said. Maybe she's just upset blowing. Dad, You have seen how far she will go to get what he wants. Do not minimize. He promised he would reach out and wear away, but I could hear the uncertain tone. I hung up feeling completely alone. My main family tie was too paralyzed by guilt to take a firm stand. Relatives bought her victim story. Diana was ready to show up uninvited on my doorstep. For a moment I could not see any way out. I sank down on my couch, and for the first time in years I cried. Not only myself, but for the little brother who never... Rock bottom said me. I had lost almost all external support. Every attempt to de-escalate fired. Compromise fed her manipulation. Being reasonable got me threatened with home intrusion. Sharing pieces of the truth changed Ullman's mind. I could not rely on other people to fix this for me. The relative not defend me. My father could not bring himself to take action. No rescue me. In that low, exhausted moment, some guide me. I stopped hoping Diana would feel remorse. I stopped waiting for my father to step in and solve the conflict. I stopped craving validation from distant cousins who knew nothing of my childhood pain. What I needed was not revenge. I needed accountability. I needed to protect my home and my peace on my own terms. I wiped my eyes. I pulled every single piece of save onto my screen. The edited text screenshots. Photos of handwritten letters. The threatening private sent. I organized every file into a folder on my phone and backed it up onto my laptop. I was not going to fire all of this off tonight, but I was ready. I knew exactly what tools I held, and I knew what I would have to do if she pushed further. The outlet had let me down, but my inner resolve had finally solidified. I turned off most of my family group message notifications that Thursday evening. My phone kept buzzing, each ping another relative weighing in on a story they only half understood. I could feel frustration burning behind my eyes. Compromise had not diffused anything. It had only given Diana ammunition. I needed something more than angry text replies to push back against the lies spreading through our family. Late Friday afternoon, I drove over to my father's basement storage unit. He kept boxes stacked back there, filled with old household belongings he could not bring himself to throw away. I remembered him mentioning years ago that he had stashed away paperwork and old letters from the time right after Jasper died. The metal roll-up door rumbled upward, cool damp air washing over me. Rows of cardboard boxes sat under bare overhead bulbs, labeled in Elias's messy handwriting. I dug through box after box. Old children's clothing, faded holiday decorations, Jasper's tiny worn stuffed bear still tucked inside a plastic garbage bag. My throat tightened when my fingers brushed that soft fur. I set it gently to one side and kept searching. Half an hour in, I found what I was looking for. A plain manila folder tucked at the bottom of a weathered carton. Inside were hospital papers from Jasper's emergency room visit, old utility bill, and a handful of handwritten notes Diana had left behind 21 years ago. I sat down on a folding plastic chair and started reading. Most of the notes were short, messy scribbles. One stopped me cold. Dated 3 days before Jasper's fever spiked. Diana had written to Tyler, her college junior boy. She talked about wanting to leave the house for... She complained about motherhood weighing her down, said she dreamed of moving into an apartment near his campus. She was already planning her exit before Jasper ever got... Jasper's death had not pushed her. She had been preparing to abandon us long before that terrible summer. My hands trembled holding that sheet of... All these years I had believed Jasper's death was the breaking point that drove her off. The truth was her. The fever had only sped up a choice she had already made. She would have left. Elias showed up halfway through reading, keys jangling. He had realized missing, and came to check the street. He froze when he saw the open manila folder spread across my knees. His face pale. "You knew," I said quietly. It was no question. "You read these letters then. You knew she was already planning to walk out before Jasper got sick. And you told me." He leaned against the concrete wall, shoulders slumping. "I did not want you to hate her more than you did. You were 8. I thought some truths were too heavy for a little. Instead, you let me grow up believing Jasper's death was what broke our family apart," I replied. "That's everything." Guilt washed features. He admitted he had buried that piece of reality alongside the lie he told at the... He had built our whole quiet little life around partial truths, protecting me from one pain by hiding another. All this time, even my own father had filtered me. I took photos of every loan. I did not take the physical original of storage. I left them in their folder. But I now possessed hard-written proof that Diana's version of the past was false. She told everyone she fled because of overwhelming grief. The letters proved she had been plotting her escape well before. When I got back to the house that night, I laid out everything I had learned, showed her the photographs of Diana's writing. She sat on my couch. "This is the whole narrative," Maggie said. "You have to understand. Even with written proof, some relatives will still choose to side with her. People cling to the want to believe. She was right. Proof would not automatically fix everything. Diana had spent weeks planting her victim narrative in family minds, unraveling it overnight. Before I figure out my next move, another up on my screen. It was from my second cousin. Diana had just shared a long emotional social media post, but pointed. She talked about losing a child decades ago, about longing for reconciliation that kept getting denied. She did not use our real names, but every distant family member knew what about. Dozens of distant family acquaintances left sympathetic comments, stared at the screen. I held evidence against her lies, yet she was out in public shaping how everyone saw our story. Half-truths traveled faster than facts. I had uncovered critical pieces of the past, but this revelation made the situation better. It dragged me deeper into the mess. The middle of the storm crisis had fully arrived. The ground underneath me felt less stable than it ever had. I woke early Monday morning, my sleep restless and shallow. The first thing I did was check my front door security camera feed, scanning the still frame for any unfamiliar car parked out on the street. Diana's threat hung over every small routine. I was done reacting to every new message or social media post she put out. From now on, I would move on my own timeline. First, I texted Maggie and told her about the threat to show up unannounced. I sent her my live camera access link. If Diana did appear at my townhouse, Maggie would see it the second the camera detected motion. Next, I called a local non-emergency police line. I explained the whole situation, laid out the saved threat message on my phone. The officer advised me to keep all records well backed up, told me to dial 911 immediately if Diana ever showed up at my property. They could not issue a formal restraining order yet, not without in-person harassment already taking place, but they logged my report. That small official paper trail mattered. After handling safety step, I drove over to my father's house. I was not coming to beg him to take my side. I came to confront the decades-old lie he told inside that elementary school office, the lie that had shaped every part of our fractured family story. He was sitting on his back porch, drinking black coffee, staring out toward his overgrown yard. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of Diana's threat to come to my townhouse. "You cannot keep treating this like a family disagreement that will blow over," I said. "This is not just hurt feelings. She's ready to intrude inside my home." Elias stared at the screen, his face heavy. I sent her a message Saturday. Told her to stay away from your address. She wrote back saying I was taking your side, that I always... Dad, that lie you told Ms. Bennett all those years ago. You told everyone she was dead. Back then I think you were trying to shield me, but that lie created this illusion. It let everyone pretend one day she could just walk back in like nothing bad ever. My voice stayed steady, not outing, just raw. You buried the truth to protect an 8-year-old. But that same half-truth left me defenseless when she finally found... He set down his knuckles whitened around the ceramic candle. Grief and guilt spilled out of him. He talked about that terrible night died, how helpless he had felt walking into that house and finding our little boy unresponsive. He said when the teacher called him to school, he had not known what to do. The lie had felt like the only way to wrap some kind of safety around me. He never stopped feeling guilty. Guilty for Diana's, guilty for the secrets he... I was young and blue, he whispered. I did not know how to hold all that pain myself. I did not forget anything. Too much damage had been done, but for the first time, I understood the full weight he had carried all these decades. We sat in quiet for a long time out on that porch. When I stood to leave, he made me one promise. If Diana ignored his warning and came near the townhouse, he would drive over immediately. He would not stay neutral anymore. Neutrality had already too much. Back home, I stopped chasing arguments. I exited every noisy relative group chat. I stopped reading every new sympathetic comment under Diana's online posts. I would not feed her hunger for attention. I had my evidence safely stored, police report logged, Maggie watched my camera feed, father's promise in my pocket. I would not go for a fight, but I was ready to defend myself. For several days, no car linked inside my driveway. No new threats appeared. I half expected her to show up every time I heard a car door slam out on the street. The quiet felt tense, not peaceful. On Wednesday afternoon, a message came through from your number. Gotten a new phone. Diana would not silent stand. Her new text did not contain screaming anger. It was carefully calibrated again, slipping back into the wounded mother persona. She said she was sorry for her harsh words. Said she'd been overcome with pain. She begged for a final chance to talk. Said she only wanted... I read it once, then replying. Did not take the bait. What she did not realize was the narrative was already shifting. A couple of distant cousins privately reached out to me. They had seen Diana's posts, But after hearing brief, unemotional pieces of what I held in evidence, they started questioning her version of events. Not but a small handful. For the first time since I re-entered my life, she was not the story. Her power over the family convent slipping away. The balance was finally tipping toward me. The quiet stretch lasted almost 1 full week. I had grown accustomed to the low-grade tension, glancing at my security camera app several times each day. I kept Diana's new number blocked, ignored every faint ripple from the extended family. Life tried to return to normal. I went to work, cooked dinner, hung out with Maggie on Friday night, but I never fully relaxed. I knew Diana was not done. Late Saturday evening, my father called me, his voice tight. He had received a short, sharp message from Diana. She was driving toward my townhouse. She said she was not going to leave until I agreed to speak with her face to face. My stomach dropped. She was making good on her old threat. "I am getting in my truck right now," Elias told me. "I will be there in 12 minutes. Lock every door. Do not open the door for any reason, no matter what she says." I hung up and moved fast. I flipped every deadbolt on my front and back doors. I sent an urgent alert to Maggie, telling her to watch the live camera feed. I pulled up the police non-emergency contact on my phone, my thumb hovering over 911. Through my front window blind, I watched headlights swing into my street. A dark sedan rolled slowly down the block, then pulled into my visitor parking spot. Diana got out of the car. She stood on my front walkway, staring straight at my front. She did not yell at first. She just stood there, arms folded across her chest. The motion alert pinged on my camera, and Maggie texted back "I see her. Dad on the way?" I shot her a quick yes. A minute later, she started. Soft knocks at first, then her insistent raps against wood. "Lila, I know you are there. Please just come out for 5. Her voice carried through the closed door. "This cannot keep going this. We have to talk." I stayed well back from the entryway, said nothing. I would not engage through a closed door. Arguing would give her exactly the reaction needed. She started calling my name, tone rising, frustration bleeding through. Neighbor Kurt twitched. Somebody was watching from the house across the street. I could feel my heart hammering ribs. Every old memory urged. Fever, the empty cutout spaces in my albums, the $10 bill in my small hand. All of it was pressing against me right on the other side of that thin. Then I heard the rumble of my father's old tires gravel. Elias skidded into the driveway behind the sedan. He climbed out quickly, boot hitting pavement. He walked straight over to where she stood. "You need to get back in the car and leave," Elias said. Voice was firm. No more weariness, no more soft-heart negotiation. "You were warned to stay away from this address. You are not coming inside." "You are not talking to her tonight," Diana spun around angry. "This is between Lila and me. It is family business. You do not me out." "Family gave you your chance," Elias answered. "You threw it away 21 years ago. Go." They argued on my front lawn. She tried to appeal to his sympathy, brought grief and regret, tried to paint herself as the wronged mother. For once, Elias would not bend. He did not let her twist into leverage. He told her if she was to drive away, he would call the police and reference the prior incident. Diana read. She glanced toward my front windows, knowing I was standing behind the glass bird. She realized her tactic had failed. I would not open up, might not step aside. She could force a conversation. For a long moment, seething. Finally, she cursed quietly, turned and climbed Burke's sedan. The engine revved. She peeled out of the street and around the corner. Silent front yard. Elias knocked gently on the door, called my name. I unlocked and let him inside. Jaw tight. The adrenaline drained out of my body all at once, started shaking. Maggie showed up with hot tea. 3 of us sat in my living room. Just happened. The attempt to force an uninvited visit in Diana's face. But this was not truly over. She lost this confrontation. Yet she still held the option to keep spreading her story among relatives and online. We all understood one thing clearly now. An unavoidable thing was ahead of us. This would not end with her simply driving off into the night. It still needed to be settled. In the days following that terrifying Saturday night, Diana went quiet again. She sent no more texts. She did not show up near my neighborhood. I kept checking my security footage every few hours, half expecting her car to reappear. The camera had recorded every second of her visit, her knocking, her raised voice, the argument out on my lawn. I backed that video file up alongside all my other evidence. Even though she was staying away physically, she kept working on the family from afar. She posted another vague social media update, hinting about cruel rejection and broken maternal bonds. Several relatives messaged me, asking what had happened that night outside my townhouse. Rumors swirled. Some heard I had locked my mother out of the house. Others heard she had tried to force her way in. The stories got more distorted as they passed from cousin to cousin. I grew tired of letting her control everyone's version of reality through hints and half-truths. I was not going to chase every family chat to argue, but I would no longer let my side remain untold. I decided to invite her to one final supervised meeting, not inside my home. We booked a small private conference room inside the local public library. The space had glass walls, other people nearby. Maggie agreed to sit in the corner of the room as my witness. My father would also. No private moments, no emotional ambushes. Everything would happen in plain. I sent Diana one single message through her old blocked. I laid out the time, the location, the ground rules. This would be our only final conversation. After the meeting, there would be no more contact of any kind. If she refused, I would distribute copies of the old letters, the edited chat logs, and the security camera footage to every member of our extended. It was not revenge. It was accountability. She replied within hours. She said, Wednesday afternoon arrived. Sunlight filtered through the tall libraries. Maggie sat off to one side. Elias sat beside me at the long table. When Diana walked into the room, her expression hard. No tearful softness, no wounded mother performance. She knew this was not a recreation. Sickening. We sat across another. For a moment, You cannot doing this, I opened. You cannot keep rewriting the past in sympathy. You cannot keep harassing me either online or door. Diana leaned forward across the table. All I ever wanted was my daughter. Is it so terrible? You wanted absolution you never earned. Calmly. I laid printed photographs of her old handwritten letters down on us. These are yours. Written 3 days before Jasper got sick. You were already planning to leave us. Jasper's fever did not break our family. You were already gone in your head that night. Her eyes scanned the handwriting. Composure cracked. For the first time, I saw genuine shock cross her face. She had forgotten she had ever those words. She had buried that memory along with everything. That was young, stupid frustration, she stammered. I did not mean. You did mean it, I cut her off. You chose your boyfriend over your old son. Then you chose to run. 21 years later, you wanting to be forgiven. But you have never once fully owned what you did. You blame my father, you blame you blame circumstance. You never look. I laid out printouts of doctored message screenshots and still frames from my security camera. Manipulated relatives. You turned up uninvited at my house. Every time I set a boundary, you trampled it down. I am not here to give you forgiveness. I am not here to build a relationship. Tell you this stops now. Anger flared in her face. You are going to destroy my reputation over when I was 19? The damage was done the night I died, I said. I am only stopping you from everyone else. My father spoke up then, and quiet. Diana, what happened cannot be undone, but you have to leave Lila alone. No more messages, no more showing up near her home, no more twisting stories for the family. If you do not, we will share all of this evidence and see the full truth. Diana looked from my father to Maggie sitting as witness, back to me. She had no more cards left to play. Her victim narrative collapsed against hard paper proof. She could weigh her own handwriting. She could not deny the camera footage. All her power to paint herself as wronged was out of her grasp. She sat silent, jaw clenched. There were no tears of genuine remorse. Only feet. Fine, she said. I will leave you alone. Told her the terms one final time. No calls, no texts, no indirect messages through relatives. No showing up near my home or my workplace. If any of those rules broke, record would go out to the whole family. She pushed her chair back and stood. Without another word, she turned to the library conference room. The heavy glass door clicked shut behind her. The high-stakes confrontation was over. The core conflict was settled. But as I gathered up the copies of letters and screenshots, healing would not arrive instantly. The scars from childhood would not vanish just because Diana agreed to step back. Real-world consequences lingered. Some would still believe her version of events. Old grief for Jasper would stay with me, but the fight to defend my own life was finished. The weeks after the library meeting unfolded slowly. I kept expecting another text, another unfamiliar car to cruise past my street. My thumb still drifted toward the security camera app out of old habit, but Diana kept her word. No messages arrived. She never appeared near my townhouse. Her vague, sad-sounding social media posts stopped entirely. For the first time in months, I was not waiting for the next blow. Peace did not feel like some bright, perfect, happy ending. It felt quiet, heavy, incomplete. Some of our extended family never shifted their opinion. A handful of cousins still thought I had been unnecessarily cruel to Diana. They kept their distance from me. Other relatives, After seeing partial copies of the evidence I chose to share with only those who asked honestly, understood where all of this pain had come from. Our family would never be whole again. Some rifts could not be mended. I learned to accept that. You cannot force other people to see the truth, no matter how solid your proof is. I spent more time with my father. The weight between us had softened, though it never fully went away. We talked about Jasper more openly than we ever had before. We visited his grave one Sunday afternoon, carrying his favorite little stuffed bear that I had rescued from the storage unit all those weeks ago. Elias laid fresh flowers down on the headstone. We stood side by side in the graveyard, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. There was so much grief we had both spent decades burying. Now we finally let it sit out in the air. He apologized for the lies and the secrets he had, not asking for full forgiveness, just asking me to understand that he had done the best he knew how when everything fell apart. I told him I ended. That did not erase the harm the half-truths had caused, but it freed both of us from carrying that resentment every single day. One rainy day, I pulled that beat-up photo box down from my closet. I spread all those jagged, cut-up photographs out across my living room floor again. Empty spaces where Diana's face used to be stared at me. I did not pick up scissors this time. I sat there for a while, looking at little me, at small smiling Jasper in the snap. I did not glue new pictures in to fill gaps. Those ragged edges belonged to my story. They were part of what made me who I was. I did not need to erase them, and I did not need. Maggie came over late. We ordered takeout food, watched a silly movie, and did not talk about Diana or family dramas. Normalcy, I realized, was built from small, ordinary moments. It was not granted to you after winning one big fight. You had to build it yourself, peace. I never wanted vengeance. I never wanted to destroy Diana. All I had ever truly wanted was to be alone, to keep the quiet built, and to honor the memory of my little brother without having that memory twisted and exploited for someone else's sympathy. I still grieve for the child I had. Some nights I still wake up with fragment dreams. A burnt forehead, a crumpled $10 bill clutched tight in my small fist, empty spaces and homes. Those memories will never disappear entirely, but they no longer days. Diana stepped in. This time was by choice, not buried under a convenient lie, not erased by scissors, just a firm final boundary. She existed somewhere out in the world, but she was no longer Carrie. I put the ruined photo box back up on the shelf. It stays there, a reminder of loss, of choices, of the fact that sometimes closure does not look like reconciliation. Sometimes closure simply means you get to keep your own peace.